Okay, quick warning to the IT department. I'm going a little bit off script here, okay? So, did you find it strange that I just pulled out my phone and started texting the so-called audience? Yes? Yes? Why? Don't you text people every day? Can't I text you my entire speech? Why? Why? Who made the rule that I can't text a speech to someone when we use the text every day? Now going back to the script. My favorite part of 2011 was when social media became known to my family and my friends. We had just moved from another country at the time, and we had almost no way to contact all the friends that we had left behind. But social media overcame this problem for us. It wasn't of any use to me at the time because I didn't have a phone or anything to use it on. But in 2012, when I finally did get a phone of my own, I got to experience the typical drill of the good morning messages and the good night messages. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't completely mind blown by social media. But between 2012 and 2019, social media seems to have become something that I find people complaining about. And what I find most ironic about all this is, you know those long forwards which you get from your relatives and your elders telling you why social media is something you have to cut down on? Where do you get them? On social media, right? As texts. But don't worry, today isn't the day where I give an entire history of social media. Rather, I would like to address the very thing that social media apps like WhatsApp and iMessenger aim to make easier, and that is communication. Communication can be defined as the imparting or exchanging of information between individuals using some medium, such as speaking or writing. Now, from this definition, we can gather that there are three aspects to communication. The first aspect is that it is an action. To impart or to exchange would mean that there is more than one person involved in the action, and therefore, it is a regular social interaction. The second aspect of communication is that there has to be some information that needs to be expressed or exchanged to the other person. Now, it would be tedious to list out exactly what could be the subject matter, but they could be facts, instructions, questions, or anything of the same field. The third aspect of communication is that there has to be a medium through which the information is expressed to the other person. As I mentioned earlier, this could be speaking or writing, but with the advancement of technology, we have expanded the horizons to texts and calls from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world at any given point of time. Now that we've set the premise of what it means to communicate, we can understand that there's more to it than man just being a social creature. In fact, there is an entire field of study dedicated to human communication. And it's called anthroposemiotics. Big word, right? In the current position of the study, they have two fields, that is rhetorical human communication and relational human communication. The focus of rhetorical communication is primarily on the study of influence, whereas the focus of relational communication is that of persuasion. This just goes to show that human communication is far more vast than we think that it is, and really cannot have any fixed boundaries as to why we communicate in the first place. But to make things easier, I've laid 4 objectives of communication. The first, we communicate to persuade someone. Secondly, in order to give or provide information. Thirdly, in order to receive or seek information. And lastly, we communicate in order to express our emotions, such as happiness, sorrow, joy, guilt, etc. Now, the last objective of communication may well be the most important one. Our brain appears very machine-like and mechanical on the surface. But if you look closer, it also holds the very key to what makes us human in the first place. And those are our emotions. To be able to communicate efficiently is to be able to express a need and have it granted, or to express your feelings of happiness and sorrow and have them understood by the other person. In fact, our biggest motivation to have any conversation in the first place comes from this deeply rooted feeling of wanting to be accepted in the society and feeling like we are a part of it. All messages that we send or receive are heavily processed through a mental filter. Now, this filter is forged by our environment. That could include our parents, our friends, relatives, neighborhood, school, etc. It can either make us understand each other better or can even lead to misunderstandings. If you think about it, you would not be the person you are today if not for the things that you have seen or the people that surround you. For me, as a child, it was normal to be friendly and like the center of attention, the life of the party kind of, because that's just a result of the environment that I grew up in. But almost as soon as we moved to another country, that was lost in an instant. It was like I had forgotten to speak altogether. But that very change in environment has brought me to this stage today, giving you this speech about why we talk to each other. So, possibly the biggest question I have to ask all of you present here today is, do we take our innate, special, one-of-a-kind ability to communicate for granted? I'm not sure if you were expecting a philosophy lesson when I said I was going to be talking about communication, but there is, at surface level, communication only seems to have a social aspect that is shared by society. However, it also has more deep, more individualistic, and psychological aspects. The psychological side of human communication is greatly influenced by the presence of modern technology, specifically because of mass media and social media. What started off as a telegram and quickly progressed to an email from there has now become the fastest and most convenient way to talk to anybody. And this has come at an especially important time where youth are voicing their opinions on these platforms about global issues. But my concern today is the most basic, most widely used form of modern communication technology, and that is the text message. Whether it's an SMS or on social media apps such as Instagram and Snapchat, texting has pulled the world into its tornado. An interesting fact about the SMS is that it was originally made for service operators to give updates to their users, not for personal one-to-one interaction. This was later found by youth and has become the various apps and things that we use today. As far as generations go, today's generation is definitely one that is built on informality and casual conversation. And this is blatantly obvious from the way that our speech has changed over the years. We can largely credit this to internet and messaging culture. The text is far more informal than an email or a phone call. Remember WhatsApp from earlier? In 2018, in the United States of America, WhatsApp alone had 1.95 trillion messages being sent every month. That is just one country in the world on one app in 1 month. But why has texting pulled the world into its storm, and with such magnitude? A survey conducted on 500 millennials in America in 2016 showed that 76% of the respondents preferred texts to calls because they were more convenient and could be made to fit their schedule. But is convenience the only reason why millennials prefer texting? Now, something I'm sure all of us have experienced ourselves or have observed in other people is this seemingly severe aversion to picking up a phone call. I've seen people in front of me receive a call, disconnect it, and in that moment, text the person calling them saying, I'm busy, text me later about it, don't call me now. Have you ever wondered why this is so? Compelling scientific evidence is piling up, showing that today's youth are more anxious than they were in the past. Now take, for instance, the case of online shopping. Why is it so popular among this generation? While the situation of going to a store and buying something doesn't seem like such a big deal, we don't like going to the store, and I'm not exaggerating. We don't like going to the store because for us, that is an anxiety-inducing situation. Online shopping not only saves the trouble of getting out of bed, but also avoids any personal interaction that we may face along the way. The same logic can be applied to texting. Texting has fewer social cues. Now, what are social cues? They are body language, voice, expressions, hand movements, etc. Therefore, perhaps the greatest gain for millennials from texting is the distance that it puts between themselves and the person that they are talking to. Not facing the person while they speak lifts a huge weight off their shoulders, wondering if they'll be judged by the other person or not. And it takes the edge off a potentially anxiety-provoking encounter if it can be handled on their smartphone. And this has influenced our lives so much that parents will hand a phone to their children so that they are no more than a text or a phone call away. Teachers will remind students of their assignments via text messaging or email. Important conversations, arguments, proposals, and even breakups manage to happen over a text. It really makes us think just how our grandparents and ancestors managed to live their lives without the basic facility of a text message. So, my last question for you. Is this how human beings are fated to live? To put things in perspective, let's start from the roots, from the very definition of communication. Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information between individuals using some medium, such as writing and speaking. No matter how scientific we try to make it, human life will never stick to one designated route, nor will it stay wary of emotions. Therefore, to communicate or to even have a conversation with someone else is so much more than simply exchanging information. UCLA professor Albert Mehrabian has found that the success of a conversation can be attributed to body language and the social cues that we mentioned earlier, rather than the actual content of the message. That would imply that texting hardly covers the basic components of a conversation. The fact that millennials have taken texting to new heights of usage only further implies unspoken rules that didn't exist before, where replying too soon or replying too late could basically determine somebody's entire personality. Humans are made for personal interaction. While the advent of communication technology has certainly done a lot to make the world a smaller place, we cannot deny the various disadvantages that have come with it on the flip side. It has almost made us forget what it is like to go to an acquaintance or a stranger and even say hello. More often than not, the very features of safety that we credit to internet culture are sometimes the very features that can cause damage to our lives. Having said that, however, technological change is inevitable. We certainly aren't going to back down the ladder of progress, and we have advanced too far ahead to even stop and breathe for a minute. So, something we must always keep in mind, no matter what the distances we reach, no matter how far ahead we go in life, we mustn't forget what it means to be a part of the human race. and what it means to be human. Being human could hold different meanings to each person. But we should remember that before we are doctors or engineers or artists, we are all human beings. We are all dependent on each other more than we think we will ever be dependent on technology. So something I would like to leave you with tonight is to always remember that there exists a face behind every screen. There are hands behind every text that you receive. And there is a voice behind every phone call made, even if it's from a call center. So if one day you decide to put down your phone and look around the real world around you, you may realize that the face behind the screen isn't what you think it seems. Thank you.